You've probably seen the 1993 cult classic film Menace to Society countless times. After almost 30 years of watching this movie, we noticed something about the characters Kane and O-Dog that was in our faces the entire time. What if wild and crazy O-Dog wasn't actually a real person, but was instead Kane's alter ego? I know, you already want to say this is impossible. But let us explain all of the clues in the movie that add up to the very plausible alternate theory that O-Dog wasn't an actual person. Oh yeah, and Kane doesn't actually die at the end of the movie either, and we'll tell you all about that too.
What's up? I'm Hype.
And I'm Cherie. And today, we're here to count down all of the evidence and clues within the movie Menace to Society that support our alternate theory that the character O-Dog is really just Kane's alter ego.
Yeah. And I want to emphasize that this is our alternate theory about the movie.
The movie is a work of fiction. It's art, open to interpretation. So just about anything is possible as long as there's evidence in the film to back it up.
So let's get started with a basic overview of our theory. What you have to realize for this theory to make sense is that the entire movie is from the perspective of Kane, the main character.
I didn't go to school but half the time. The other half, I was out selling dope.
Early in the film, it is established that Kane is the narrator. We hear his thoughts throughout the movie and after the opening scene. The first character he introduces us to is O-Dog, also known as America's Worst Nightmare. And he labels him as this bad guy, which he was.
So when we see O-Dog throughout the movie, he lives up to this label of being bad. He's always behaving like the worst of the worst. He's immature. He's the one making the most detrimental decisions that affect Kane and the other people negatively.
I smoke anybody. I just don't give a.
He is like the devil on Kane's shoulder, influencing him to become the absolute worst kind of person.
Right, and throughout the movie, we see Kane struggle to do the right thing while this internal tug of war is happening inside his own mind. From a psychological perspective, Kane is putting the blame on O-Dog for all of the things he can't come to terms with having done.
Stop showing the f***ing tape.
Yes, and when we see other characters talking to O-Dog, they're really talking to Kane. And of course, whenever Kane and O-Dog are talking to one another, that's really just Kane's inner dialogue or him thinking to himself. Remember, Kane believes that O-Dog is a completely separate person.
Now, let's take a look at all the clues in the movie that point to Kane and O-Dog being the same person. And here's the first one. In the opening scene, Kane has never taken a life before, so we speculate that he is internalizing what he did to the store owners in the robbery scene by blaming the offense on O-Dog, but we talk in greater detail about the truth of the robbery scene later in this video.
When Kane's cousin Harold is killed, O-Dog doesn't help to carry Kane to the car. Instead, we see O-Dog have what appears to be an exchange with Sharif before they pull off to get Kane to the hospital.
Sharif, come on, man. Well, it ain't right, okay? You stay with him then.
But if you look at it closely, O-Dog and Sharif are not actually talking to each other. Sharif is generally saying that they can't leave Harold in the street to die alone.
Hey, wait, tell me to get him in the car, man.
And O-Dog is saying, thus Kane is thinking, to leave Harold because he isn't gonna make it and Kane needs to get to the hospital.
You stay with him then. Let's go.
So on a subconscious level, Kane wants to live. This ties into the question that Kane's grandfather poses to him about whether he cares if he lives or dies.
Do you care whether you live or die?
In the scene after Kane comes home from the hospital, after the incident with Harold, Kane is in the house with his grandparents. We see Kane opening the door and O-Dog is there. When Kane's grandfather sees he is about to leave, he knows Kane is headed for trouble, so he says, "Katie, Kevin, come on inside,"
Katie, Kevin, come on inside.
and tells him to sit on the couch. O-Dog says hello to the grandparents, but they don't even respond to him.
Hey,
The grandfather begins to lecture Kane about taking lives being wrong. Kane tells the grandfather that he has never taken a life, and the grandfather responds, "I doubt that. And Kevin, I heard stories about you."
Oh, I doubt that. And Kevin, I've heard stories about you.
Right. So from this statement, the viewer likely assumes that O-Dog's real name is Kevin. But is it? In the film, we have heard Kane referred to by Kane, his nickname, and what sounds like KD. Some people have assumed that KD is Kaydee. However, we think that KD are literally the initials K and D. We think these are Kane's initials, and Kane's real first name is not Katie, but Kevin. Look at how Sharif's father pronounces his name in the classroom scene later in the movie when he's trying to get Kane to move to Kansas with Stacy and Sharif.
Hey, KD.
He actually says KD. Another point about the nickname Kane is that it mirrors the name of Cain from the Bible. Cain in the Bible was the first person to take a life, and Cain in Menace to Society is the first person in the movie to take a life.
So looking back at this living room scene, it is really just a conversation between Kane and his grandparents.
Yeah, you come over here and sit right here on the couch.
Kane wants to go outside and his grandfather is trying to keep him out of trouble.
In the next scene, Kane and O-Dog are outside, and O-Dog tells Kane, "I was gonna tell you something before we went up in the house."
Hey, man, I was gonna tell you something before we went up in the house, man. What's up?
He says, "We went up in the house." But this doesn't make any sense because Kane was already in the house and had not been outside at that point. But when you think about the theory of them being the same person, Kane was always at home. When O-Dog appears is when the bad thoughts start coming into Kane's mind. This is further underscored by what O-Dog says next, that he knows where the guys that got Harold are and entices Kane to go and look for them to get revenge.
Down with a 187?
Let's do this.
The revenge is the idea of Kane's bad side, O-Dog.
Man, you getting down?
In the next scene, Kane, O-Dog, and AWACS are shown riding in the car, looking for some guys who got Harold. Kane and O-Dog begin to argue. Kane is trying to get the nerve to retaliate for what they did to Harold, and O-Dog is trying to convince him that he must avenge Harold. Notice the symbolism in where Kane and O-Dog choose to sit in the car. O-Dog took the front seat and Kane took the back seat. This is representative of how O-Dog is really beginning to take over Kane's personality. Again, it's the two sides of Kane's mind at war. But what about when AWACS appears to tell both of them to shut up?
Man, both of y'all shut the f up.
So you have to remember that this movie is from Kane's perspective. When you consider that O-Dog and Kane are really the same person, you can see that what it would have looked like to AWACS was Kane himself going back and forth about the terms of his retaliation. Things like he wouldn't want anything to happen to old people or children, but at the same time being outraged by his cousin's life being taken and wanting to even the score. From AWACS's perspective, Kane sounded all over the place. At one point, he's talking about becoming a movie star, then he becomes passionate about avenging Harold with all of these stipulations. Think about it. Kane sounded like a real mess in that car.
So you like my little tape, don't you?
Look, I'm not killing no kids on no old folks, alright?
I smoke anybody.
I'm not killing no kids.
I ain't letting that ride. I don't care who the out there.
And anytime someone is talking to both Kane and O-Dog in the movie, this is because we are seeing everything from Kane's point of view, and he sees O-Dog as a real person, completely separate from himself.
Later in the movie, Kane is arrested after the attempted car theft, and then he is interrogated about what happened with the robbery in the opening scene. They claim they have found Kane's fingerprints on the beer bottle. During the questioning, Kane stammers, messing up I and we
After we was leaving, after I left.
when talking to the detective. In the case of him and O-Dog, I and we are the same person. Why didn't they find O-Dog's prints on anything when he touched almost everything in that store? And you mean to tell me they found none of his prints? The only explanation is that O-Dog and Kane's fingerprints are one and the same. Let me set the stage of what really happened in the opening scene. Kane was in the store alone trying to buy a 40. He was drinking a beer as he walked to the counter to pay. The clerk makes a rude comment about his mother who had passed away.
I feel sorry for your mother.
Kane drops the bottle and murks everybody. He gets the tape and then flees the scene.
So back to O-Dog after the car theft arrest. Kane says that O-Dog was let go because he was a juvenile.
They let O-Dog off with a warning because he was still a minor.
Again, all of this is from Kane's perspective. In any real-world scenario, they would have found the prints from both Kane and O-Dog in that store, and both of them would have been held for the crime.
Here's the next clue. In the movie, there are a number of times when you see Kane follow O-Dog's lead, and we see how he is clearly influencing Kane throughout the film. O-Dog took lives in the opening scene. Then Kane did the same. O-Dog stole the car first. Then Kane basically did that with the rims. Finally, remember what O-Dog did to the crackhead? And then he got the double burger with cheese?
Got these burgers, man. They some double cheeseburgers.
Well, when Kane carjacked the guy in the drive-thru, what did he order? Double burger with cheese.
And I'll take a double burger with cheese.
This was just his subconscious tapping into O-Dog that had him make such a specific request that mirrored O-Dog in a scene that Kane wasn't even in. How did Kane know to order the double burger with cheese? Because O-Dog is a part of Kane. They are the same person.
The next clue is that O-Dog is never really around as a prominent figure whenever people are trying to get Kane to change his life, but he's always there to cause and participate in the chaos. For instance, at the barbecue in the park, when Sharif's father begins talking to Kane and the other guys, O-Dog is busy getting high and not paying attention to the deeper discussion. We hear the name Kevin mentioned for the second time in the movie.
As I see Kevin trying to hide that reefer.
Sharif's father tells the O-Dog personality that it's okay for him to smoke in his presence. Also notice how nobody is really interacting with O-Dog for the most part. And later in the classroom, when Sharif's father encourages Kane to go to Kansas with Sharif and Stacy to start a new life, O-Dog was nowhere to be found then either.
Or at the end of the movie, Kane decides to move to Atlanta with Ronnie and her son Anthony. He is willing to change his life in favor of long-term survival. Ronnie is having a going away party at her house. In the scene, we see the O-Dog personality try to take another beer, and he has an exchange with Ronnie where she tries to stop him. And at one point she says, "You ain't Kane."
You ain't Kane. Stop drinking up all the beer.
Here's another way to look at what's happening in that scene. That is Kane talking to Ronnie, but here's the issue at play. The O-Dog personality is doing a lot of drinking, and the more he drinks, the less he is like Kane. Ronnie knows this, which is why she wants him to slow down on the drinking. By saying he isn't Kane, Ronnie is really saying that Kane is not acting like himself. And whenever O-Dog is the personality present, he is nothing like Kane. Ronnie is in love with Kane, not O-Dog. So she's always trying to keep that personality in control.
Right. The next clue also takes place at Ronnie's party. Remember the scene where little Anthony comes out and asks for some beer while they were on the porch?
Yo, let me have a drink.
Take a closer look at what really happens. The O-Dog personality is doing the most. First, he tries to get Sharif to smoke.
Hey, Reeks, won't you go ahead and get a little hit of this?
And then he tries to give little Anthony some beer.
Go ahead, have a little man.
The Kane personality objects to giving the kid beer, and he obviously sees a parallel between this situation and the incident with Parnell when he was a kid.
Now go and get a little nigga a drink.
When Sharif tells O-Dog, "Don't be giving this little kid no liquor," the O-Dog personality responds, "You ain't his daddy."
You ain't his daddy?
And then Sharif says, "You not either, Kevin."
You not either, Kevin?
Now this was a real dig by Sharif, because Kane, whose real name is Kevin, is playing daddy to Anthony, but he's not his daddy. Also, this is the third and last time we hear a reference to the name Kevin, and Kane is always present when this name is said.
Next, you see Ronnie come out and take Anthony inside and demand to speak to Kane inside.
Kane, can I speak to you for a second?
Kane follows, and we see the O-Dog personality say, "She got him in some panties, man."
She got that nigga in some fatties, man.
But you've got to realize that O-Dog's personality is really speaking to Kane's insecurities about giving in to Ronnie's demands. Also notice how O-Dog is not speaking to anyone directly. He always seems to be speaking rhetorically.
Hey, this for the homies who ain't here.
Yeah, it's like he's just looking in the air, looking all around, but he's never really speaking directly to anybody. But later at the party, Kane gets into this altercation with Chauncey over Ronnie. Notice how during the fight, O-Dog magically disappears. That's because in this moment of rage, the O-Dog personality is the one who's actually in charge.
The next clue happens when Chauncey is brooding over having been beat up by Kane, and he plans to snitch by sending a copy of the opening scene tape to the police. Chauncey specifically says, "I bet you Kane won't be laughing after police get a hold of this tape."
I bet you Kane won't be laughing after 5-0 get a hold of this tape.
But why would he snitch when supposedly O-Dog was on the tape too? It makes sense that he wants to get back at Kane, but at the expense of O-Dog? But it all fits together perfectly when you realize that Kane was the only one on that tape. Chauncey knew he was setting Kane up to go to jail. Remember when we saw O-Dog appear on the tape early in the movie? That was all through Kane's eyes.
And the final clues take place in the final climactic scene in the movie. We see Kane and the other characters helping Ronnie move boxes out of the house. O-Dog is busy trying to talk Kane out of leaving because he doesn't want Kane to change his life. He knows that if Kane changes his life, the O-Dog personality won't have as much influence and power over Kane.
You'll be a silly motherfucker if you leave with this broad, man.
In that same scene, O-Dog refuses to carry a bag that Ronnie tries to hand him, saying, "I ain't the one leaving."
I ain't the one leaving. Sell out.
He's not leaving them because he will always be with Kane. O-Dog is a part of Kane. That's what you got to keep in mind.
We all know what happens when that car comes around the corner in front of Ronnie's house in the last scene. In the aftermath, we see Kane gasping in his final moments. For almost 30 years, we took this ending at face value, believing Kane met a tragic end after deciding too late that he did really care whether he lived or died. But is this what really happened?
Here's another way to look at the end of the movie. The drive-by happened as shown, but the good part of Kane, the Kane personality, died, while the bad part of Kane, the O-Dog personality, survived the attack and lived on. This is how Kane, the narrator, is able to tell you that he did care about whether he lived or died after he was already dead.
Yeah, I do.
And as a final little nugget, in the closing sequence, flashbacks are playing. But one of the clips shows O-Dog being placed into the back of a squad car that we had not seen in the movie at all.
I mean, you never knew what was gonna happen or when.
This wasn't a flashback, so why was it included? It's out of place, but this is a clue about the future that the filmmakers wanted us to know.
I mean, you never knew what was gonna happen or when.
That O-Dog/Kane survives, but pays the price for the things he's done. That tape Chauncey sent to the police is why O-Dog, or Kane, was being put in that police car.
That's it. So what do you guys think? If you enjoyed this video about our alternate fan theory from Menace to Society, be sure to check out the playlist of our other alternate movie theories like Boys in the Hood, linked in the description.
And if you made it to this point in the video, please type "I care" in the comments to let us know you watched the entire video. Don't forget to subscribe, hit the bell, and give us a like on this video.
Bye.